Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Faithful Phanatics Show live here on DSM Media's Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter channels. I'm your host, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. And today we are joined by a very special guest, ESPN's own Paul Hembekides. You guys might know him as Sneaky Hembo on ESPN's Get Up or The Greeny Show on ESPN Radio. You can check him out on Twitter at Paul Hembo. If you don't already, you're missing out. Hembo, what is going on, my man?
Well, I mean, right now I am just a couple of days out from watching the Phillies play in the freaking World Series. Like, this is surreal. Like, the best things in life are unexpected, right? And so the Phillies fired their manager in May. They got swept by the Cubs like a month ago. They're only in the playoffs because it expanded. They were an underdog in all three of the series they played so far. And they haven't even really been challenged in playoffs. Like, it's crazy how well this team is playing right now.
92.
And I'd be lying if I said I saw this thing coming. I absolutely did not. And I've never been happier to be more wrong about anything in my entire life.
Look at you setting up the first question of the day I have for you, man. So I want to start off with a very loaded question. One that you're asking yourself, I'm asking myself, and every other Philly fan is asking themselves right now. How did we get here? Not that you have an exact answer. You can pinpoint one thing, but just the course of the postseason, not even what transpired with Girardi and all that. How did we get here? What has contributed to this 9-2 run to the World Series right now?
The biggest reason why the Phillies are in the World Series is because Bryce Harper is a Philly. Here's what I mean. I'm serious. The Phillies stunk on ice for the better part of a decade until Bryce Harper arrived. It was, I think, 7 or 8 straight losing seasons, right?
Yep.
Bryce Harper signed as a free agent, 13 years, $330 million. He was really the first, I would say, major building block of the whole operation. We had some assets, but that triggered from John Middleton that this team was going to attempt to be good. And when you have a strong foundation in place, it enables the rest of the pieces to come together properly. For years under Ruben Amaro and then under Matt Klentak, like, that just didn't happen. Like, the Phillies weren't, obviously Klentak was the one who signed the guy.
Right.
But like, there was too many scattershot things happening. Whereas now under Dave Dombrowski, who inherited Bryce Harper as the foundational piece, everything else was able to then come into place, right? And so he was like, the big things had been taken care of. What he did was refine the roster around the margins. It took obviously a while to get there, but Bryce Harper is a force multiplier. Like, I think the comparison to LeBron James is actually a pretty decent one. LeBron James goes to your town to play. You're going to have a chance. It might not be right away, and It might not be at the highest level right away. But LeBron James goes to your team, you're going to have a chance to win. We've seen it in Cleveland, obviously, a couple times. We've seen it in LA. We saw it in Miami. Bryce Harper, the Nationals stunk forever. Bryce Harper showed up, and all of a sudden they're a perennial contender, right? He goes to the Phillies. We stink forever, and all of a sudden now we're in the freaking World Series. Like, I absolutely believe that for all the other moves that we've made and for all the young talent that has emerged, the signing of Bryce Harper triggered all of this because his sort of greatness by association, like the orbit of Bryce Harper, created a culture that made this possible, I think. For as much as the other stuff that they did, he is the one that made it happen, and that's why I was so happy in the 8th inning in the clincher against San Diego that it was him who sent us to the series.
Build a statue, brother. Build the statue. How many times have you watched? It's not the same video. There's the WIP call. There's the Joe Davis call. There's different angles. There's Titanic music. There's Moneyball. How many times have you watched the Bryce Harper 8th inning home run video?
I've watched variations of it 3,000 times. Now, I think my favorite call was the Fransky call. It's Bedlam in the bank. The alliteration was just money. But I also
Joe Davis was not far off. The biggest swing of his life.
Yeah, the swing of a lifetime is. I mean, we're talking about like T-shirts, right? We're talking about home run call T-shirts.
Like lots of merch sold.
I can't overstate the impact of the at-bat, right? So if we're to set the scene here, like everything that sort of created that context to make it one of the best moments in the history of my fandom, right? Like, the Philly special was amazing, but it happened in the second quarter of a game, and so many things happened after it. Like, for all intents and purposes, like, it wasn't a walk-off.
It's as close to a walk-off as you get, exactly.
I mean, the bottom of the 8th inning, go-ahead home run. So the context of the situation is what made it so great for me, just as a fan. Like, I'm just talking about this as a fan now, right? So Bryce Harper's up with a man on base. Bob Melvin sticks with the righty against all odds, inexplicably, when he has the best left-handed pitcher in the world, right, in the bullpen, right? So that happens. But Bryce Harper, that at-bat was art. Like, if you put almost any other great hitter in baseball up during that
the changeup's getting you.
You're going to swing over that changeup, or maybe you're going to be content to take a walk, or maybe you're going to split a gap. Like Bryce Harper went up there with one goal and one goal only, and that was to put a home run swing on it, right? And when he took that 1-2 changeup, it was obvious that something great was going to happen because he's seeing a beach ball right now. And for him, like the way that moment built within the context of the at bat almost made it inevitable. Like it was the climax of a prodigious career that up until this point has enjoyed every single bit of individual success that a human being
Right.
possibly can in the game of baseball. But that swing in and of itself is going to send him to Cooperstown. Like Bryce Harper could retire tomorrow, a Hall of Famer, and that would be the moment that punctuated his career. I don't think you can possibly overstate the moment in Philly lore
No.
and as it relates to the impact on his career. It's just incredible.
It still doesn't feel real. And I was talking about this with Scotty, who's in the comments, and a lot of other Phillies fans. And it's like you sit in that moment, you're watching the game as a fan, and part of you thinks like there's no shot. Like he's not, but the run that he's on right now, which brings me to my next question. You mentioned he's seeing a beach ball up there right now. He's as far away from from getting it out as anyone could possibly be. Talk to me. You're a numbers guy. I don't know if you have the numbers, but he's on a historical run. How unprecedented is this postseason run by him right now? Because you talk about the money and you talk about the superstar status, but it's not often stars show up to this extent. We just watched Aaron Judge hit for 62 home runs in a contract year and then lay an egg in the postseason and get booed by Yankees fans when he's probably leaving, right? So how unprecedented is it that the star of all stars here in Philadelphia is on this run, not just from that one swing of the bat, but dude, he's got a home run in 3 straight series clinching games, the doubles, the OPS, the average. It's unprecedented.
It's LeBron in the 2016 finals when he led everybody and everything. I mean, I'm serious. Like Bryce Harper right now is the best baseball player on the planet. I have 2 different ways to demonstrate how great he's been numerically. So these are his numbers with men on base this postseason. Pretty basic stat. He's got 18 plate appearances with men on base in the postseason. He's 8 for 15, 2 walks, 1 sack. Of those 8 hits, 2 bombs, 3 doubles, 8 RBI, 17 total bases. Bryce Harper cannot be pitched to with men on base. Further, all right? And I should CC the Astros Twitter account if and when I tweet this. This is Bryce Harper.
No, please don't. Please don't.
Listen. I don't think their advanced guys are in the mentions. This is Bryce Harper against fastballs in the postseason, all right? Mm-hmm. He's 10 for 18 with 3 bombs and 22 total bases. Bryce Harper can't be pitched to with a man on base or, regardless of men on base, something straight. Like Bryce Harper right now is the kind of locked in that you see like once in a lifetime. And it just so happens that he's locked in when it matters most. Like this is not a stretch in like we've seen Bryce Harper get hot. Like
right.
he was a man on a mission in the second half of last year when he won MVP, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that he's doing this against the best pitching in the world, I mean, right now he looks like he's in junior college again, where like everything he hits is scalding. Right. Every swing is with conviction. Every take is perfect. Like Bryce Harper right now is the best baseball player on the planet, and he's carry a lineup good. Bryce Harper is so good right now that even if he doesn't get the kind of support from the rest of his teammates in the World Series, he is still good enough to pull a Reggie Jackson. Like he's right now, like he's very capable of being that kind of good. Like win a playoff game or right. 2 by himself kind of good. If they
and it was set up so perfectly, right? Because of who was on the other side, Manny. Oh. And what could have transpired that offseason, right? If they allow him in the building, if they don't lock the door on him, who the hell knows what happens? But like there's been so many moments over this run, not just in the NLCS, but the NLDS and the wild card. You got the Reese bat spike. You got Bryce. Whose house is it? This is my effing house on second base. Then I just did that. This run, it's magical right now, man. So before we get to the World Series, because I said from Sunday night throughout tonight is my celebration time, and then tomorrow, but I'll start it with you early, my attention turns towards the World Series and the task at hand, right? So thoughts, we talked a lot about Bryce Harper and the lineup, right? Schwartz. Let me ask you this. Did they legitimately have before that home run, they probably had 4 guys that could have walked away off the podium with the NLCS MVP? No? Like before that home run, Reese had the biggest argument to probably take it. Wheeler was outstanding in 2 of the 5 games, and Schwarber heated up. So if he doesn't hit that home run, who's walking away with the MVP trophy in the NLCS?
I think Reese would have won it. I think Reese would have won it because of the impact of the bombs. But I mean, right now Zach Wheeler is diabolical.
Yeah.
Zach, I think that I'm saying this, like, you know me, like I can separate the objective with my emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Harper is the best hitter on the planet right now. Zach Wheeler is the best pitcher on the planet right now. I understand why they're going no-line game one. I get it. I probably would do the same thing. But if the Phillies are going to win this World Series, I think Zach Wheeler is probably going to have to throw 3 times in some capacity. His numbers are astonishing. All right, he's faced 91 batters in the playoffs. 91. He's allowed 16 base runners of 91 batters. 18. Okay, so listen, 4 starts, right? 4 starts.
Mm-hmm.
4 starts so far. He's gotten at least 18 outs in all of them. He's allowed fewer than 5 hits in all of them. And he hasn't had multiple walks in any of them. Bro, he's the only pitcher in Major League history to have 4 straight starts like that in any postseason run. Like, we're talking about right now a pitcher whose base runner avoidance is historic. A pitcher right now who, going up against the Houston Astros lineup, that in all candor doesn't really hit velocity well at all. Right now, 97 plus, all right? 97 plus miles per hour in the postseason. Phillies got an 836 OPS against those pitches, right? The Phillies can handle premium velocity. The Astros got a 664. All right, so with all the guys that are in our pen right now that can throw a billion, combined with Zach Wheeler, like, to me, game 2 becomes like the game to circle, and game 1 becomes the game to steal. I am like, game 2 is like a bet your house game with how well Zach Wheeler's throwing the ball right now, combined with how good he is, with how bad the Astros are handling velocity at the moment.
So I want to come back to that in 1 minute with you, the decision to go with Knowles and kind of the thought process there. But I want to wrap up the NLCS with this. Thoughts on, obviously, we know how spectacular Zach Wheeler was this entire postseason run in last series. Aaron Nola, up until the little bumpy ride in San Diego, was phenomenal, right? Ranger Suarez had a good game 3. Thoughts on the pitching, but more specifically, the bullpen and Topper's managing of it. And what I mean by that is it's so situational. Get me to the next day, survive tonight, because it's no longer, okay, Sir Anthony's my closer, Alvarado's the setup. Sir Anthony will throw the 7th, Alvarado will throw the 9th. Alvarado will throw the 6th, Robertson will throw the 9th. Thoughts on how he's managing this situational bullpen?
I think that he's been phenomenal, like way better than I expected. Like, because, like, generally speaking, I don't love when managers go off a feel, which it feels like he does quite often.
Yeah.
But he also has a pulse of his team in a way that obviously Joe Girardi didn't, and in a way very few managers can. Here's what I mean. So, like, let's juxtapose his managing of the bullpen versus Bob Melvin, right? So this is Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin's, all right, it's the 8th inning of game 5, right? He's trying to figure out how to get the 27th out. Robbie's not worried about getting the 27th out. He's worrying about getting the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th out, because if you can't win the battle, you win the war. He is. I have never seen a Philadelphia manager better at winning the battle. Like, you win that inning, you win that batter. That's how you win the game. You don't worry about who's going to be the last person on the mound for you, right? You can't. That's why the Phillies won the last game, because they went to, I mean, look, the Sir Anthony thing is ridiculous because we were playing inside of a monsoon, right? But his feel for that, to start with Robertson in the 9th, and then
the thoughts of going to Ranger
immediately, not having that plan, like not having the formula in place. That's the difference between he and everyone else. And I'll tell you what, this might sound provocative. I don't mean it to be disparaging, but the Phillies will win 1 game in the World Series this year because Rob Thompson is their manager and our manager, and because Dusty Baker is there. The Phillies will win a game in the World Series this year because of who our manager is and because of who their manager is. Dusty Baker has forgotten more about baseball than I will ever know in my life.
Yeah.
Everyone who has ever played for him loves the guy. Every writer that has ever written about him loves the guy. But it is not a coincidence that he has not won a championship. All right? This is a manager who, in big moments, has bleeped the bed. He just has. All right? That does not necessarily mean that he will continue to.
Yeah.
But he has made some of the most famous gaffes in the history of the postseason. 2003 Cubs. And on and on. Like, this is a team that choked literally last year in the postseason, in the World Series against Atlanta. So I feel awfully good about that. Like, to me, this is actually a managerial mismatch, and the guy who's in his first season has a big edge over the guy that's in his 100th season.
First half season. And it's refreshing, right? To have a team here in Philly that can have a coach or a manager have such an effect on a game that they can actually win you a game instead of just not try to cost you a game, right? It's Sixers stock. But anyway, that's another conversation. Okay, back to the pitching matchup for games 1 and 2. He announces today officially he's going with Knowles game 1. He's going with Zach Wheeler game 2. You said you understand it. Because you hinted at it. Wheeler, in some capacity, if he started game 1, would go 1, 4, and 7, right?
Yep.
That changes now with him starting game 2. What's the thought process here with Nola going 1?
So Nola's going to go 1 here to give Wheeler an extra day of rest for game 2.
Right, which he's much better on number-wise.
And because with Nola, you're not quite as confident he's going to give you quite the length, and your bullpen is well rested for a week, right? So what you have is the full complement of your rested bullpen to go with who we believe your second best starting pitcher is. Game 2, Zach Wheeler is going to need to get you 18 outs, right? And maybe even a few more. They haven't really let him had too much length so far. He hasn't hit 100 pitches yet in the playoffs. Maybe this will be his opportunity. I think he has demonstrated that he can get a little bit deeper into games. Obviously, the managers press the right buttons in his starts and pull them at the right times. Generally, again, we can argue about the Sir Anthony decision in the last game amidst the monsoon. But I actually agree with the decision because, to me, it stacks up correctly for your bullpen with that rest with Nola. And then it gives Wheeler an extra day. And I think that actually helps him a lot because he's going to come out throwing just a little bit harder against a lineup that can't quite handle the velocity, like I mentioned, the way that the Phillies can. I like and understand the move, and what you're going to see is Zach Wheeler have a sort of impactful game 5, 6, or 7 appearance on what would otherwise be his pen day. I'm good with it.
Okay, yeah, because the number I had seen, I think it was ERA-wise, Wheeler on 5 days rest this year, 3-something ERA or whatever. Wheeler with an extra day rest, like a 1.67 ERA, and that's exactly what they're getting him here. So I like it, and I didn't even think about the point that, yeah, you do have the 5 days in between. So I'll skip ahead a question. I'll come back to the lineup question I had for you. Speaking of these 5 days off, right, the Sunday to Friday start, is there a concern at all with how hot Bryce and Schwarber and this team was of the layoff, of this 5-day break? And you could also argue it for Houston, who is undefeated in this postseason, getting a break. So who does it benefit, affect? Does it affect no one, this little layoff?
I mean, it definitely affects both teams, but to me, like the issue that you run into with this thing is when there's a rest disparity. Like that's what would worry me. Like if, for example, the Astros had required 6 or 7 games to beat the Yankees and the Phillies won by a sweep or vice versa, you worry about that kind of power imbalance affecting things. And in baseball, what actually has been the case recently is the team with more rest does not benefit. You know, the team that's super rested winds up coming out sluggish early in the World Series. I think the numbers backed it up, at least recently. I'm not really concerned about that being a thing for 2 reasons. One, both teams have the exact same amount of rest. And secondly, like the Phillies have a group of players that I don't worry about lacking any motivation or purpose or urgency. Right. Like there have been Philadelphia teams that have been highly successful that you may have been worried about that about. This just isn't one of them right now. Like the Phillies have the city behind them in such a way that I'm not worried about it. And the other thing that we have to consider here is the Phillies have a way bigger fan base than the Houston Astros. And there's going to be a bleep ton of Phillies fans down there for games 1 and 2, and especially for games 6 and 7, because the Eagles are playing the Thursday before game 6, right? And so I don't have this fear that like they're not going into enemy territory. Like Philadelphians are going to go down there and light the city on fire. Like they're not going to lose any of their juice or their energy. If the Phillies lose to the Astros, it's because the Astros were a superior team. I'm not into all like the ancillary, qualitative wishy-washiness that people just say "I told you so" 2 games later. Like if the Phillies go down there and get trounced in games 1 and 2, it's because the Houston Astros are a freaking juggernaut. That's why.
Right. Exactly. Okay. There's been some talk. Obviously, he's switched up the rotation 1 and 2. There's been some talk of protecting Bryce in this order with how hot he's been. Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown, former baseball player, came out apparently like an hour ago and said, I don't know why people are still pitching to Bryce Harper. With how effective this lineup has been, but how slightly ineffective Castellanos has been behind Bryce, are you switching up the order? Are you moving Bryce back to 3, potentially JT to 4, to give Bryce that protection where, hey, you cannot pitch around him because so-and-so is behind him waiting?
I'm of the belief that you should always hit your best hitter second. The math backs that up, and I think going Schwarber, Bryce at the top of the order is the kind of thing that will frighten any pitcher in the first inning of a baseball game. There is absolutely no excuse for Bryce Harper to ever not hit in the first inning of a baseball game. None. You are lessening your team's chances to win. And I understand why we had that way for a while, because Bryce took a while to get back. Like Bryce Harper wasn't,
and JT,
Bryce Harper wasn't even good like 3 weeks ago. Like it's taken him a while to get here. Like my opinion is that the Phillies should go Schwarber and then Bryce. And I want Justin Verlander to have to pitch to each of those 2 guys to start that series while fans are still filing in. That's what I think. I understand like the idea that you keep your lineup the same because it has worked. But there was just no excuse under the sun for Bryce Harper not to maximize his at bats. And if you might be suffering, an RBI opportunity here or there, But over the course of a series, like that's not going to matter nearly as much as just opportunity. I don't want that guy on deck ever. I don't want Bryce Harper leading off the second inning is what I'm saying. He should absolutely be hitting second. Going Schwarber, Harper. I mean, like that's an insane one too.
Yeah.
Like I'm at, like back in the day, it's like you put your two punch and Judy on base guys. Get them on, get them over. I mean, you might go bomb to lead off the game. Like that's what I want.
Yeah, and it's weird that you bring that up, and it's weird that Topper never played around with it. Like Bryce was just consistently in the 3-hole. He played around with the 2-hole, whether it was Reese or JT, etc. Before. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, man. I hear the don't fix it if it ain't broke, don't fix it part. But I do think you definitely at least need protection behind Bryce. So if he's not making the huge adjustment to 2, like you're alluding to, 3 is definitely the spot I'm moving Bryce up to in this lineup.
I don't even believe in protection. It's not really a thing. I don't believe that he's going to see any less pitches based upon who's before or after. Not really. Like, it's just not a thing. Like, I mean, there have been so many research studies done that have debunked that over the years. Anecdotally, it might show up now and again. But to me, it's pretty simple. Bryce Harper's your best hitter. Your best hitter should hit as many times as possible. Like, it's the same idea for hitting Schwarber leadoff. He's not a traditional leadoff hitter, but you want to maximize his chances. He led the freaking National League in home runs. Who cares how people have done it for the last 150 years?
I agree, man. So let me ask you this. Outside of Bryce, wherever he may bat, who is the most important bat in this order? Is it Reese with how important he is in the 2-hole? JT, Schwartz. Who's the biggest bat outside of Bryce this series?
Nick Castellanos is the most important hitter on the Phillies, aside from Bryce Harper, and here's why. We have seen practically every other hitter on this team get really hot. We saw Castellanos get hot for one game. He's not really hit for much power at all. Like, if that bat comes along, which you haven't really counted on much for a lot of the season in all candor, that could make a massive difference in the middle of your order. Now, obviously, like to me, Gene Segura matters a decent amount because he sort of flips your lineup at the bottom there and is a high volume contact guy. But the Nick Castellanos I view as a sleeping giant. I mean, this is a guy that led the National League in extra base hits over the last few seasons. Like they signed him to a 9-figure contract because he could really, really hit.
Right.
He hasn't done that much of that. And if he can sort of find his way, like that's the one guy who's like not coming close to playing to the back of his baseball card. That's why I think he's the case. Because right now, you're actually getting good contributions up and down that lineup. He's also hitting too high in the order. He's hitting 5 a lot, right? So like, he's hitting too high in the order for that to be an easy out. Like you can't afford to have an easy out there against a rotation and a staff this good. That's why I put him there.
I love it, man.
He's the X factor. He's the X factor.
I love it. Okay, let's get into the series and predictions. So I got to ask you, you mentioned earlier, if Houston comes out and smacks the Phillies around in the first 2 games and they're just a much better team, to me, like, part of me says they're on such a ride, and I know how talented this lineup has been, and Wheeler and Nola, and F Houston, and the Phillies have a very, very good chance to win. I also think it also feels like Goliath to me in a sense, like Houston is that good. What is your feel on this series? What would you give percentage-wise the Phillies to win the World Series?
So I think the Phillies are more likely to lose the series than win the series, which is to say if I were handicapping the thing in Vegas, that's what I would have it. I would have, Houston at something like minus 150. In reality, they're like, 170, 180, depending on what books you're looking at. But I think you raise an excellent question because this is sort of par for the course for us as Philadelphia fans. And I'll be able to unpack this for you, okay? So each of the last 7 times, we're going back 25 years now. Each of the last 7 times Philly fans have been in the championship, they've been the underdog. The 2022 Phillies now, the 2017 Eagles against New England, the 2010 Flyers against Chicago, the Phillies in 08 and 09 were underdogs. The Eagles in 04 were underdogs to the Patriots, and the Sixers in 01 were underdogs to the Lakers. You have to go back to the 1997 Flyers to find a case in which a Philadelphia team was favored entering a championship game or series. That is astonishing. But this is what we're used to, right? This is an embodiment of the city, right? The Phillies won the championship in 2008 as an underdog. The Eagles won the championship in 2017 as a massive underdog to a dynasty, right? Like this is nothing new for us as fans. Obviously, that's not material as it relates to who's going to win this series itself. Like these are two baseball teams, but like I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and this track record say we're awfully used to this too. Villanova has been a dog a bunch of times too. So anyway, point being, I think the Houston Astros have a better than not chance to win the series. But I ain't picking the Houston Astros, and the reason why I ain't picking the Houston Astros is twofold. One, the Phillies have a markedly better lineup. Markedly. The difference between the Yankees lineup and the Phillies lineup is like comparing an apple to an elephant, all right? One of them you can eat, the other will trample you. Right now, the Phillies have the best lineup in baseball. It's better than Houston's lineup. The Houston doesn't have as many tough outs right now. Houston has 3 or 4 guys in their lineup that you would describe as easy outs. The Phillies have only one, and that's Brandon Marsh. And Brandon Marsh had a massive home run in the postseason.
Yeah.
Right now, like the Phillies they go 9 deep. That's what matters in the playoffs. How many bites at the apple do you get at scoring runs? The depth that the Phillies have in their lineup is a massive reason for why I think they're going to win the series. And I'll give you the second reason. And you and I shared this experience. You and I were sitting together at Game 3 of the 2022 NLDS when we watched Rhys Hoskins and Bryce Harper set the city on fire with a couple of home runs and light the city ablaze, right? Like, I've never heard a sound in my life that loud. I was at Game 3 of the 2016 World Series in Chicago at Wrigley Field. It was the first time they had played a World Series game in Chicago at that stadium since 1945. At no point was it close to as loud as the bank was on that day. I can't imagine what it was like when Bryce Harper hit his home run. Yeah. It is a legitimate home field advantage, the greatest in the history of baseball. The greatest in the history of baseball. The Phillies are 21-9. 21-9 at Citizens Bank Park all time in the postseason. That is the best record by any team in any home stadium in the history of the postseason, and that dates to 1903. 1903.
That's rarely outrageous.
Very rarely do fans impact what happens on a baseball field. The home team wins in baseball like 55% of the time in the playoffs. The Phillies win nearly 70% of the time in front of their home fans. Nearly 70. And there's like a nice little stretch in there, against San Francisco and St. Louis where things didn't break out for us. Yeah. Like the numbers could be way worse. Like way better. The Phillies play better baseball in that stadium than any team in the history of baseball's postseason ever has. It's remarkable to see. If the Phillies win one game in Houston, they're not going back to Houston. That's my prediction.
I was going to ask you to set the stage, and I love it, man, because here's the thing. I was at the NLDS Game 3 with you, and the place had a buzz to it an hour before first pitch, right? Then I went to the first home game in the NLCS, and someone was walking by me, and he said it like, he goes, dude, I was here last series, and this is like there was another extra buzz to the NLCS, right? I was at the Goose Island third, and it's just, I can't imagine. Now, mind you, people are going to be spending $1,500 plus for a seat. So if you're spending $1,500 plus for a seat, imagine the energy you're bringing before the game starts. So
look. That's a concern of mine, actually. Do you mind if I just
really
for a second?
Yeah.
Here's my concern. All right, tell me if this is unfounded.
Not
if you can afford,
out?
if you can afford to go to the Phillies World Series game, it might well mean that you aren't the average blue collar me or you fan that's been lining that stadium throughout the rest of the season. Like, here's the deal, Philadelphia. All right, if you're an account manager somewhere and this is the first game you're going to now because the Phillies are in the series, I want to take a picture on Instagram and show my friends how rich I am. Yeah. This is it in the game for you. If you're going to show up, this is what you're going to do. All right, you're going to stand up for 9 innings. You're going to drink a pint of light beer, which might be out of character. You're not drinking rosé, right? And you're going to yell and hurl expletives at Jose Altuve and maybe even try to smuggle a trash can into the stadium and bang it to intimidate the opponent. I'm not kidding. The Phillies' home field advantage has made a legitimate difference. It, to me, is a reason why they have won a game or two in the playoffs at home. All right, so if you're going to show up now and pay $1,500 a ticket, right, you have to act a fool like the rest of us did all the way through. There is no other option.
They will, man. I hear you. But I think that the bank is going to be lit on fire. So you're going. All right. So you said if they win one of two, they're not going back to Houston. It's over in 5. Is that your prediction, or do you think they lose both in Houston? Like you said, you're picking the Phillies to win, but is it Phillies in 5?
Phillies in 5 is my prediction. I think what's going to happen is this. And the Phillies are the likeliest path here. I think is the Phillies lose game 1. Verlander's excellent. I think they can get to him for sure, but I don't love the Verlander-Nola matchup fundamentally. I think Zach Wheeler's going to shove against this lineup, and the Phillies are going to win game 2. And the Phillies are going to come back home with a full head of steam, light the place on fire in game 3. And the Astros are really good. We know this. And the Astros are a really good team where they can punch you in the face. But you know what the Astros are not good at? Getting punched in the face. All right? This team has scar tissue and memories of all sorts of cheating and extracurriculars and nonsense in the playoffs. And they haven't heard half of what we're going to say.
No.
3, 4, and 5.
No.
Like, dude. If they thought the Yankees fans were bad, wait until Jose Altuve takes a fastball in the ribs and to hear what we're going to be yelling at him when he's trotting to first base, right? Like it's going to be a whole different animal there. And I'm not like they're not a good get punch in the face team. We saw it last year. We saw it in 2019 when they lost to the Nationals. That ain't their specialty, and that's our specialty.
Dude, if Marcell Ozuna got DUI chanted at him by 46,000 people every time he stepped to the plate, Like, that's Marcell Ozuna. Like, yes, he's on the Braves, he's on a rival, but he's minuscule in this series. Imagine what you just set the stage for Jose Altuve, for whatever pitcher has to come here, Lance McCullers, whoever it is. But last question, real quick. I know you got to get out of here. Who would you throw game 4? We saw the Bailey Falter experience. We saw Noah Syndergaard in the NLDS. Who are you rolling with in that 4th game?
It doesn't matter at all who you start. It doesn't matter at all who you start. I mean, I would probably be inclined to go Syndergaard just because, you know what? I would probably here's the deal. Like, Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker are probably their 2 most dangerous hitters now. So maybe you start the lefty. But I mean, that's obviously the biggest concern. That's like obviously the biggest concern game. We also need to be prepared to throw our studs on 3 days rest. Like, that's going to have to be in play for me. We can't overlook the possibility that happens. Look, the game 4 starter won't be what wins or loses the series, in my judgment. I think remember in 01, Schilling, Randy Johnson, like that kind of, look, when you build your team like this way and you have a few, if you got a few stars in your rotation, you got to be willing, like, this is the time to immerse yourself in postseason baseball. If you got to throw on 3 days rest, take an Advil, right? Eat a potato, you got to do it.
Eat a banana. I got you, brother. All right. Phillies in 5 from Paul Hembekides. Check him out at Paul Hembo. Hembo, appreciate you for coming on the show. And hopefully we can talk in a little bit about the World Series champion Philadelphia Phillies. Buddy, thank you for joining again.
Ring the bell, baby.
Ring the bell. Phillies in 5. Soak that one in for a second, Abe. Soak everything he just said in for a second, because I love talking to Hembo for multiple reasons, but it's he can very easily divide his fandom from the reality of the situation and the numbers and what things should tell you, right? So he's got me ready, Scotty. And I'll tell you what, Scotty and I were talking after we recorded Turf Talk earlier, and I was nervous. Like, I'm a lot more unnerved now after hearing all of that. Because maybe they're not so Goliath. Maybe we're not so David. Are we the underdog? Yes, but that gap is definitely bridged. Definitely made a ton of sense. A lot of trash cans outside. Yeah, he'll probably hear from outside the bank too, Scotty. But you heard the man, guys. Show up, show out. Drink some light beer, be rowdy, do whatever you got to do. If you're paying for that ticket, make sure you live up to that ticket's price. I am not going to give my Phillies Astros World Series prediction just yet. I will do that on Friday on DSM Pregame Live, Game 1 preview. So, guys, thank you so much to everyone who sat through this interview with Hembo, whoever's going to check it out afterwards. But a quick message from our sponsors over at Gents Barber Lounge. DSM Media is brought to you by Gents Barber Lounge. Check out one of 2 great locations in Fishtown and Old City and book your appointment today. Gents owns the craft, and it shows. Right, to the #1 barbershop on Yelp in the Philadelphia area, having multiple award-winning barbers and being able to handle any style of cut, adult or kid. Take a look at some of Gents' work. Check them out at gentsbarberlounge.com to book your appointment today. Again, that is gentsbarberlounge.com. Fishtown or Old City if you're in the area. Also, check our friends out at Luxiden Jewelers at shopluxiden.com. Use promo code DSM for 25% off your total purchase. Again, that is promo code DSM, all capital letters, at the bottom of your screen for 25% off your checkout. And they also include free shipping. You can find all of DSM Media's great content out over at DSM_media on Twitter. Check out the link tree in our bio. We also stream live on YouTube and Facebook. If you guys are interactive on the show, head on over to the YouTube channel specifically, especially because that's where you can come find and hang out with me and my man Scotty in about an hour and a half. 6:30, we'll be going live. DSM pregame live. Sixers, Raptors preview exclusively on the YouTube channel. For myself, for DSM Media, have a great rest of your night.